Welcome to Season 9 of The Sonic Truth, brought to you by Veritonic in partnership with AW360. This season, we're diving into connected TV, the fastest growing force reshaping advertising and marketing today. Because right now, the brands that win aren't the ones shouting the loudest. They're the ones that understand what truly moves audiences and can prove it. And we're bringing in the people driving the biggest shifts in CTV, advertising, and marketing. The leaders, the innovators, and the voices redefining how impact gets made. Let's get into the conversation.
Welcome to the Sonic Truth podcast. Exciting day today. We have Leif Welch here, the CEO of JamLoop and the founder. So Leif, tell us about yourself a little bit. Tell us a little bit of backstory and just kind of context of how you got here. And then we'll start to dive into you and JamLoop and CTV and all the different things that are happening in an exciting space.
Sure. Scott, thanks for having me. Glad to be here. Yeah, I've been in ad tech for about 25 years. Originally, I had a finance background, gone to business school, was doing some consulting, trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And this is back in 1999. Of course, the first dot-com boom was taking off. I was in Chicago at the time, and I remember thinking, I've got to get a piece of what's going out on the West Coast. I have a musician by hobby, and I was looking for ways to combine my interest in business and my interest in music. And at the time, you may recall that the big search engine of the day was Alta Vista. This is pre-Google days. And Alta Vista was trying to go public, and they were trying to build out the team. And I went over and interviewed for a position as the head of the music channel. And so I was originally hired by a woman who said, "Hey, I want you to be the product manager for the music channel." So sounded great to me. I went back to Chicago, quit my consulting job, packed my bags, showed up a few weeks later in Palo Alto. And their first reaction was, "Who are you?" And I said, "Oh, I'm Leif Welch." And they're like, "Well, what are you doing here? Like, what's your role?" I said, "Oh, I'm supposed to run the music channel." And they said, "Who hired you?" And I said, "Oh, this woman Celia hired." They said, "Oh yeah, she got fired a couple of weeks ago." So anyway, to make a long story short, I ended up in a business development role. It's funny, I sat down with the new general manager. He looked at my resume and he's like, "I got to tell you, I don't like MBAs and you're an MBA. Also, I don't like consultants at all. And you're clearly a consultant. What are you doing here?" And I just told him what I was looking to do. And he said, "Okay, you know what? Why don't you come on board? You seem fine. Come on board, but I want you to be in business development, not in product management for music." And I said, "Yeah, sure, I'll take that job." Well, I remember driving home very vividly, and I'm like, I have no idea what business development is. I've never even heard of that term before, but I was just happy to be here. You know, it was a wild ride, a big ride up, big ride down. And then of course, the crash happened. But anyway, I stayed out in the Bay Area ever since. And I've just been at all kinds of ad tech companies, big and small, always in a role of trying to figure out, okay, here's some interesting technology. What can we do this to either help publishers make more money or help advertisers have more effective advertising?
Great. So I have to ask an obvious bias here, given there's a guitar behind you, there's a guitar behind me.
Yeah.
We got a couple of questions here that it's just got to get it out of the way. So like, how much actually do you think that your kind of background as a musician, when you're in that situation versus being very rigid and kind of what you can do, that kind of creativity, did that kind of maybe help you in that business development situation, maybe help them even consider you for that? And then how much did that kind of run in the background? I think a lot of people think, well, if I have an MBA and I'm going to do this and I'm going to be a CEO or I'm going to be in business development or any of these things, it's like a one track thing. Like there's also range. So how much does creativity play a role in that, maybe from like kind of in parallel to the origin story you just laid out?
Yeah. I don't think it's not like, it's an obvious, hey, because I'm maybe musically creative, that somehow makes me more creative on the business side. But there is something, you hear these stories where people who are really into music also happen to be quite analytical and driven toward math. And I think I've been in my in my business career, it has been this combination of extremely analytical, feeling very comfortable running models in Excel and pivot tables and analyzing data and using that to figure out, okay, are there patterns that are going on that can present an opportunity? But then also at the same time, realizing there's a certain amount of serendipity. You may relate when you're trying to write music or create music. Sometimes mistakes happen, or you hit a wrong chord, or you do something funny, and then you think, oh my God, that actually sounds pretty good. Let's keep an open mind and see where it goes. So I think, especially in entrepreneurship, it's always this push-pull between following a very strict path and staying focused versus keeping an open mind and waiting to see what comes to you. And I think maybe in the background, music has contributed a little bit to that mindset.
No, I think so. There's a couple things that I think you tease out of that. I think one of them is it is a communication and collaborative thing, right? Music is like you've got to play with others, you've got to get your message across. Like those are all good tools. And I
Yeah.
think like look, education in the arts, that's a whole nother podcast. But just how important that is in developing people who can be successful in getting things done and communicating
Yes.
ideas. But what's also interesting that you bring up is pattern recognition. And I think some people get that music math association. I think when we get into some of the technical aspects of JamLoop in a little
Yeah.
bit, this will start to make sense even more. But for me personally, it's actually not mathematical, but I do because I am not a math person, funny enough. But I'm in the
Mhm.
analytics and technical space. But it's really recognizing those patterns. I come to math from the outside in versus sometimes the inside out, and I think that's
Mhm.
being able to see those things and visualize them. I think in the business world is a superpower, right? And I think you clearly have that because it's not just a sea of numbers to you or a bunch of numbers. You're seeing connectivity there. So
Mhm.
how did you get from kind of that consulting, business development, ups and downs of the valley? Give us the JamLoop genesis and where did that start? Where did the idea come from? How did who was involved or how did that start?
So this is going back now to 2008. I was the co-founder of an ad tech company called Admission, and we had an early version of dynamic display advertising. So imagine you had a display ad that the content of which was fed dynamically for, let's say, for car dealers. You'd have cars that are actually sitting on the lot right now fed into the ad itself, or for real estate, it could be real estate ads. So, and this has become much more common these days, both in display and in video, even where you have database driven dynamic ads. We had taken that company and sold it in 2008. It was my opportunity. I had a little cash to play with. I'd always thought about starting my own business. And again, I was trying to combine my love for business with my love for music. And so I actually launched the first version of JamLoop in 2008. Now, fast forward to today, we're on like the third version of JamLoop. But in that first version, the idea was, let's create a marketplace to help musicians find their new or used equipment and then to find each other. And so what I did was I created a marketplace. I was scraping feeds, content from Craigslist. I tapped into the eBay API. There was Musician's Friend. There were a number of music marketplaces. And so I essentially created a meta vertical search engine for new and music gear. And then the idea was, once you found your gear, let's connect you with your local musician friend. So it was like a LinkedIn specifically for musicians. And I had started tackling the first part, and the name JamLoop came from, it was all about let's help people find more transparency in the buying and selling in the marketplace, essentially. And JamLoop, of course, was jamming. And it also had a sense of like, we're creating something together. We're creating music. We're creating something as a group. We're moving forward. We're going places. And then the loop part was all about the connectivity, the community, the social aspect. You've got the information. I'm keeping you in the loop. You're in the loop of what's hot, what's not, who the right players are, and so on. So that was the original version of JamLoop. I did that for about 9 months. Didn't really go anywhere. What I realized is musicians are a terrible client base in terms of They don't have any money. They can't make decisions. They're constantly returning things. And I thought, oh my God, I'm out of money. I'm out of time. I've got to go back and get a real job. So I did. I went back to corporate America for the next 5 years, and I kept the JamLoop name and kind of the company structure alive, more or less as a tax write-off. Dumped all this engineering dollars into it. I needed a tax write-off.
That's my music publishing company that I've had for 20 years.
Yeah,
we'll delete
exactly.
this part. Don't tell the IRS.
So I kept it around, and then I went back to corporate. I worked for Cox Media Group for 5 years and launched their mobile division. Cox had decided they were not going to invest in certain areas like mobile that I was interested in. And so they were shutting that whole division down. 2013 is when I said, look, there are a couple of customers. Do you mind if I take them? Because you're shutting this whole thing down. And they said, yeah, do whatever you want. So I relaunched a new company, and I was looking for a name. I had a deal in hand. And so I needed a corporate structure. I needed a contract. And so I was like, you know what? JamLoop, great name for a media company. I love it.
Perfect.
It's going to work just as well. I took that and I created the document, got it signed, and that was the relaunch of JamLoop. And that was JamLoop,
Wow.
2.0, which was more or less a mobile display ad network. There was nothing unique about it. We were just taking off of the shelf DSP technology, buying inventory, marketing it up, and selling it on other DSPs, skimming off a piece there. And there was really nothing new about it, nothing differentiated. It made a little bit of money, but I realized this is also not going to go anywhere. And so this is now around 2017. You could see the success that YouTube was having with user-generated content. Monetizing that. You could see the success that Netflix was having with streaming content on a subscription model. And so I thought, this is just a matter of time. There's going to be real professional content. A lot of it's going to be monetized via advertising. Let's build a platform and do the same thing that we've been doing earlier, which is curated inventory, totally transparent reporting. And we built our first version of the CTV, connected TV DSP, launched it in January of 2018, and then kind of the rest is history.
Wow. And so it's a really great story. I think that just how you kind of iterated and the kind of as you kind of said earlier about the happy accident or the name that stuck through and kind of came through there that had nothing to do with it. Really in some ways is fantastic, and it just still works.
That's right.
That's a really,
there were common themes of how to use technology to create more transparency in some kind of a buyer and seller marketplace. I would have never known that. First of all, I would have never known I'd be in the advertising business to begin with. When mobile was hot, I just went there because that's what was hot. And then it's just a matter of like, what's the next big format? Where the margin's going to be? What problem has not solved? So it was really taking those same concepts and applying them to the next big thing, which was CTV.
Right. And your openness to like adapting to like kind of the opportunity. I think a lot of entrepreneurs and founders and anybody listening to this podcast, right? They're most likely working for a media organization. Like it's being open to possibilities, right? I think a lot of people are just like, I'm just going to do it this way because it's the way it's always been done. And I think a lot of the best ideas come from some kind of synthesis or some kind of, assembly of 2 or 3 ideas. It's not like there's an idea that's original, although those do happen, but rare. It's really a good idea for this thing and a good idea for this thing and a good idea for this thing. It's like putting a band together, right? You don't want 3 people with the same personality. That won't last very long. You need 3 people that are puzzle pieces that fit together. And I'm sure you see that in hiring and growing, and it works in team building as well.
Yeah. But, couple things come to mind here. It's, if you're thinking about starting a company, being an entrepreneur, which is something that I thought about for a long time, and sounds like you've experienced that too. It's really hard to come up with a totally original idea. Very few people can do that. But if you can take, like you said, ideas from different disciplines, different areas, and do something that's already out there, but just do it a little bit differently or doing it better, that is then there's a ton of opportunity. And that's basically what I've done. This, it's not like any of this was original, but hopefully doing it a little bit better. And the other thing that was, I think, interesting early on as an entrepreneur is it's really, there's this constant push and pull between two competing forces. On one hand, you need to keep this open mind. You need to try different things out and figure out what's going to land, what's going to stick, what's going to be replicable in terms of, a business model, generating true customer base and so on. On the other hand, as a startup, you need to be extremely focused and decide just as much what you're not going to do as what you're going to do. And JamLoop was and is a self-funded company. So we didn't have the luxury of, $5-10 million sitting in the bank where we could try a lot of things out. We had to very quickly do this combination of keep an open mind, try different things out, see what's going to work. But then also, once we see that, and it's a very data-driven approach, what are the signals telling us, then narrow down. And so that, that approach has, I think, carried over even to today, where we've picked the lanes that we want to play in and do them really, really well with a tremendous amount of focus. And for us, that's CTV and all the things that come with that, the transparency piece, but then walk away from a fair amount of things because we'll never be able to fund it all. And so that's kind of the philosophy we've gone with.
Yeah, no, and there's I think any investor or venture capitalist will tell you they'll bet on the jockey, not the horse. It's the person, which clearly you've got all that. But I think the execution is the hard part, right? There's lots of ideas. If you can't execute them, there's really no point in any of it. And that actually is a perfect segue. And what I was thinking about is, okay, so now you've got this, and CTV is obviously going through a transformative. I think we're probably in the early stages of, just my personal opinion, but it seems like there's a lot in front of it right now as to what's possible, and just connected TV and advertising in the way advertising on it and streaming as well. So who is your, just contextualizing JamLoop for let's say somebody's listening to this, they've never heard of JamLoop, or they're aware of CTV, they advertise on CTV or they know about it. Give us kind of like from the 30,000 feet, and then kind of land the plane of just like, what is JamLoop? And then let's get into a little bit about just like all the things you kind of talked about. Like, what about JamLoop is kind of special once you get in there? But just for, in case somebody's never heard of JamLoop and they're listening to this, just give us a little bit of just high level overview to contextualize it.
You can think of us as a buying platform to get you on streaming television, to get any SMB, any brand on streaming television, to reach targeted audiences on great content. It looks like a regular TV commercial. I mean, the bulk of the ads are going to be on the big screen. People are watching movies and TV shows. And in the old world, traditional linear TV, everyone receives the same commercial. When they served a Super Bowl ad, if I'm in New York and you're in, LA, everyone was going to see the same TV ad, and it would be expensive for companies to produce those ads and to buy those ads and be on TV. So it was really just a very big barrier to entry. Today, anyone can be on TV. Any brand should be on TV, and they need to be reaching their relevant audiences. We help them do that. And then because this is a digital advertising format, it's also very trackable. So you can serve up different ads in different households or on different devices. We help our customers do that and then see how these ads are performing. And they see not only what's going on in the ad itself, but what happened after that. And so that's the kind of company we are, and we use technology to enable that.
Right. So if I'm coming to this for the first time, right, and I think the word SMB, or small to medium sized business, I think is what people kind of think of when they hear SMB. It can probably mean different things.
Yeah.
But what is the spectrum there of kind of people coming to this now? Is it my local car dealer? Is it my regional law firm? Is it a startup? What is it really do you think of that in terms of like ad spend or return on ad spend? Like, what kind of classifies that and as your kind of customer? And does your platform kind of accordion up and down depending on who that end user is?
Yes. Yeah. So JamLoop as a company focuses on what I would describe as mid market advertisers. This is mainly independent agencies based all around the US. These agencies might be 5 to 50 people. Maybe they have five local or regional clients. These, the typical advertisers that we're running are car dealer groups, local furniture retailers, fast food restaurant chains, health and wellness centers, local banks, credit unions. A lot of these businesses are spending maybe $1 to $5 million a year on local linear television. They've been doing that for the last 20 years. And now they realize, you know what? Audiences are now home and they're increasingly cutting the cable cord. They're watching on streaming apps. It could be on Hulu, could be on Paramount, could be on an ESPN app, whatever it is, doesn't really matter. That's where they're watching. And so these advertisers need to get in front of those streaming audiences, and we help them do that. Now, those agencies, and we work, I would say it's probably 80% with independent agencies,
Okay.
20% with the advertisers directly. That type of profile of buyer is different than the big brands. The big Fortune 500 brands, they're dealing with the big agency holdcos. They typically use a platform like the Trade Desk to execute their buys. It's all about big national campaigns, brand awareness. And we have a little bit of business there. We generally do not play in that space. We play one tier down where it's, companies that are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars or a couple $1 million a year on local and regional advertising. They're too small for the Trade Desk. They don't have the operational resources or their expertise to handle their media buys. And so they're looking for point solutions like JamLoop to help them with that. And that's where we focus. We do a little bit with long tail local SMBs, but it's not our core focus. I mean, we're generally not working with the local pizza shop, local dry cleaner, and so on. We're kind of in that middle tier.
Got it. Here in Connecticut, it's like I get those Jordan's furniture ads or Bob's Discount Furniture. I mean, they must spend a ton. And I suspect, given how often I hear their ads, they're probably in the upper.
Yeah.
And anyone listening to this is in Connecticut, it's like, good God, you can't move without hearing one of their ads. It's like, and there's a lot of we get a lot of law firms kind of in that.
That's right. Yep.
Like
exactly. Now we did recently launch a new division that's more of a performance business. So we spent about a year building out our own in-house attribution solution. And that really solves the problem of, okay, you've seen the ad in the living room. Now you may be retargeting them on a mobile device when they're on the go. What happened then? Did they visit the website? Did they transact? Did they fill out a form? What did they do? Was there some kind of a payoff, conversion, outcome on the other side? And that's what the attribution solves for. Once we rolled that out, we thought, hey, this is now a great opportunity to expand our business. We launched a performance division. We call it our enterprise division, but that's now going after national brands that are much more e-commerce oriented, more performance oriented. They need to be spending a ton of money on Meta, Facebook, Google, TikTok, Instagram. Many of them have not yet advertised on television because they're thinking about, okay, we want bottom of the funnel, real conversion. And that's great. Those platforms work extremely well. But at some point you should be on TV because you got to fill up that top of the funnel. You've got to create that initial awareness.
Right. And if it's trustworthy and can be tracked, then performance is performance, I assume, right?
Exactly. So that is where we're now investing as well. So that's kind of an expansion of our business.
Well, that's exciting. And so really you're getting people who are probably advertising somewhere else to kind of come to CTV. And I think one of the big questions would be trust, right? Because the smaller businesses, while there are many of them, right? So you could probably arrive at a similar place, and hopefully as you grow, right? Like, obviously there's a lot more of these people than I think people probably realize.
Yeah.
And I think and they all add up. And so how much does their creative, because I imagine that's a barrier, right? The actual creative, the ad itself, and then them kind of trusting you for campaign 2 and campaign 3. And I don't know if the agency is kind of where when agencies are involved, it can vary like that. That's a little bit of a middle there. So I don't know. And how does that mousetrap work for you? And especially in a performance world, right? Because if you do performance, and the creative is dragging you down, it might be hard to control. So how involved or uninvolved are you in the creation, and how how much does your platform or your client services or client success team kind of interface with the agency to kind of get that trust layer? I know it's a big question, but if you
Mhm.
can kind of tackle that in a
Yeah,
couple
yeah.
of parts. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Creative is still king. It's still it's the biggest influence on the success of a campaign. Now, historically, JamLoop didn't get a whole lot involved. I mean, most of the clients that we worked with over the last 5 years already were advertising on local TV. They had a creative. We just take that creative and we put it in a digital format and then we're running it. But as soon as we got into the performance game, then you need to tackle it, I think, differently for two reasons. One is as I said before, many of those advertisers haven't been on television before. And so they need a creative. And secondly is you should not be serving up the same creative for every targeting tactic. I mean, imagine you're trying to target. Everyone spends a lot of time on their CRM and they're slicing and dicing their CRM, coming up with all of these very granular audience segments that they want to target. And let's say when they're doing Google pay-per-click, they're very specific on the keywords they're using for the different targets. Well, you have to take that same performance approach to CTV. You need to be leveraging your CRM, trying to understand what segments you want to reach, and then you need to make a different creative for each one of those. And you should also be varying the creative by geo. So a message in one part of the country might be quite different than a message in another part of the country. It could vary, the format could vary by screen types. If you're in a living room, you're watching a full-length movie, and it's a great opportunity to serve up a 30-second commercial taking over their whole big screen. That's a very lean back, immersive experience, and you're going to take one approach on the creative. When you want to retarget the user on the go, on a mobile device with a short attention span, and they're watching a 2-minute short form news highlight, you don't want to serve up the same kind of commercial. It's more action oriented. It's maybe 10 to 12 seconds in length. So different approach. And then also, of course, depending on the stage of the funnel, if you're like creating the initial brand awareness, you take one approach. The creative further down the funnel is now much more direct response oriented, call to action oriented, QR code, that kind of stuff. To kind of wrap it up on the creative side, we've now gotten into that. We give an advertiser a creative for free if they need it. We'll make different versions if they need it. And that's really part of the success of driving, I think, success in performance. So that's kind of
You
creative
kind of
angle. I don't know
factor
if you had any more.
into the kind of buy and you create
Yeah.
that for them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you we don't have minimums as a general rule because we want to encourage anyone and everyone to get on CTV and we'll make it work. But yeah, if you're going to do a very basic, plain vanilla AI driven commercial, we'll give that to you for free. If you want different versions, you want a more high-end creative, then generally humans need to get involved. And, they'll take with the AI basic versions and then kind of clean those up, make them a little bit more professional. And there we'll ask for certain minimum buys. But, we're generally pretty flexible with customers.
Yeah, we'll have you on for season 10 of the Sonic Truth to talk about AI creative, because that's a whole nother topic, which I'm
Yes.
really
Yes.
curious about. But I think the interesting thing is size. So one of the things, and I want to make sure we get kind of all this in the time frame of the podcast. You might have to have the part two, but there's a perception, and then this is just, obviously I work in the analytics business and this sort of stuff, and I work with the whole spectrum of different brands, and I'm old enough to have done this for a while. What is the expectation of those agencies and let's call this mid-market advertiser? Because I think when you have attribution and when you have creative services and when you're advertising, I think when it's those people might have even higher expectations sometimes than large brands and holdcos, right? About what kind of level of service they're going to get, what kind of analytics they're going to get. I mean, just because, it's like the mid-market client could be a very intense client.
Yes.
Of data intense, expectation intense. How do you balance that? Because sometimes the smaller budget is 10 times the work. And there's that old thing, when I used to be in business development, it's like the $1 million deal is easier to close and to service than the $10,000 deal, which I've experienced firsthand many times. So how do you balance that? And how much do you solve that with technology, and how amazing is your team? I think to kind of deal with that.
So this is a big reason why local is so difficult is you have small dollars, lots of line items, mostly zip code targeted. There's a scarcity of inventory in certain zip codes. There's a lot of thought that needs to be taken into account to deliver on a local campaign. And you're absolutely right. It's just as easy, if not easier, to deliver, let's say, $1 million national campaign as it is a $10,000 or $1,000 local campaign. It's a lot of work. And that was really the nut that we had to crack in order to scale at JamLoop. And I think that's the thing we do exceedingly well. Now, the reason why we've been able to do that well and scale it into a profitable company is because of the tech. So we invested early on. The whole thing behind the transparency was you're doing all of the analysis and buying decisions at the impression level, and then you're reporting at the impression level across all the different dimensions, geo, screen, audience segment, et cetera, et cetera. And we needed that data first internally so that we could make the right business decisions and do it profitably. We had to know what our margin is on every campaign and so on. And then we made that data available to our servicing arm, our account managers, so that they're intimately familiar with how a campaign is working, so that when they need to service a client, they are super informed and the client can express, and then the third leg of that stool is we then expose that data to the client. And we try to do it in a way that's not too overwhelming, but we're making very rich data, very granular data set available to the client so that in the middle of the campaign, they can say, this part's working, this part needs to change. We can make those changes. We know what they are. We know what the impact will be on the campaign. We make those changes, and then within hours, those changes are reflected there. So it gives the client the confidence that we know what we're doing. They see the changes. The reason why we're able to service them so well, and they absolutely demand a high level of service. The reason we can do that is because the technology. So the technology is the means to the end by which we can provide a relatively high level, high touch level of service. Our account managers are amazing, but they're amazing in large part because they have access to a rich set of data that makes them look really informed.
And you really solved it. I mean, you kind of took the hardest part of the problem. And I think, well, your experience, it all makes sense to me now. It's like hearing the
Yeah.
whole, it's like the founder origin story, the ad tech, all those
Yeah.
pieces come together because your perspective actually is like a recipe of like digital ad targeting. It's like combined with media, combined with this kind of creative approach, and you're aware of the importance of creative, and you're kind of putting these things together. And coming from the era, I'm of the same kind of generation. We're conditioned to solve these problems with tech first, right? We're not
Yeah.
going to like do an agency solution to a problem and then have some tech. Like we're going to solve the problem with tech and then
Yeah.
bring an agency over the top. So just kind of as in wrapping it up. So like, what's like a great example or kind of like a way that people kind of can get information? I'm dying to get a demo of this, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'll be
Yeah.
raising my hand. I got to see this myself.
Yeah.
What's the best way for people to get in touch with JamLoop, with you, and kind of get more information?
Yeah. So we have a few different ways. Number one is we have 30 salespeople based all around the country that are focused on different parts of the business and different parts of the country. Just going to the JamLoop website and you just fill out a form and you'll hear same day back from someone. So that's probably the easiest way. We also, by the way, just a month ago launched self-serve. This is new for JamLoop. So, to date, 100% of our business was and is managed service. Newly, we launched the self-serve platform. So if you go again to the JamLoop website and click on launch a campaign, it'll take you right there.
So I can go.
And
I'm a mid-market advertiser. I can go to JamLoop, or I work at one of
it's
these agencies, and I'm an account manager at the agency. I can go on and actually launch a campaign myself.
absolutely. You just go there, just like you would set up a Facebook advertising or Google advertising campaign. You go in there, create an account, you specify whether you're an agency or an advertiser, and it'll route you there. You choose the inventory you want to run on, the target, the audience segment you want to reach, drop in your creative. If you don't have a creative, you work with our team to get you one for free. Drop in your credit card and launch the campaign. You can launch it all within minutes. And then for agencies, we also have a white label version. So agencies want to be able to show value to their clients, and they want to be able to say that they're on the cutting edge. And many of these agencies are too small to go out. They're not going to create their own tech platform. What we're giving them is a white label version. They can have their logo, their URL, can create their custom bundles, their pricing, and so on, offer that to their clients all under their brand. And I think for a slightly larger agency, that's a great solution to really essentially offer the most cutting edge CTV platform capability that's out there, but they can do it under their brand.
That's awesome. Okay. That's really, so, and it's powered by JamLoop, or I'm an agency and I can.
It's just there. The JamLoop doesn't even have to be in the mix. And it's a great, and by the way,
solution is new in the last couple months.
We just launched it a month ago. And by the way, it offers not only CTV, but you can do retargeting with online video, display retargeting, pause ads, audio ads. We're about to add pause and audio ads in the next couple of weeks. And it also includes the attribution for no additional cost, which is baked into the solution.
Right. So you could see, say I wanted to hit whatever, most of Colorado, and I want to do podcast and CTV. I can do it through that one platform.
That's right. Anything, we do have some capabilities that are not yet available in the self-serve platform. They're available through our managed service. But for anything that's not available yet in the UI, we can just deliver it on the back end through the managed service. So it's all done off of the same platform. Yeah.
Exciting. All right. So to get in touch, we'll just give everyone your cell phone number and just have them call.
Sure.
You'll personally set up the campaign for them. So this is exciting. Yeah. I think the self-service option, and I think what's a big thing that stands out to me just in doing this podcast and talking to a lot of different people in CTV and in podcasting and in media is the fact that you're actually really offering it to anybody. But in order to do that, you actually have to have very sophisticated tech, right? I think that sometimes people are going to have the sophisticated tech. They're going to take something where I have to have a massive addressable market and I have to focus on this big thing. And you're actually solving the hardest part of the problem, and you're solving a massive problem, but it's a lot harder to solve a massive problem that has a lot of little pieces to make up the massive problem. And I think that's a really compelling story. The business has taken on 3 or 4 different phases. I think I might have lost count, but now you're launching self-serve, and it's not like you're still on this journey, right? It's not a destination for you. You're continuing to develop new IP and new features and that I'm assuming that never stops. So that's my last question is, what's next for JamLoop? What's next for a version, whatever we're on?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, what we've done extremely well, because we started with the tech, we started with our own proprietary bidder, we added on our own attribution. That allows us to get into a bunch of different areas. I think where we see the big growth opportunity is we've got a ton of experience now in serving local advertisers with the zip code targeting and giving them, a great media mix and the reach and frequency that they're looking for. We now launched the attribution and the performance products where you can calculate a true return on ad spend and kind of cost per whatever your metric is that you want to mention. We think there's a tremendous opportunity to work with bigger national or very large regional brands that have both an online e-commerce storefront with hard return on ad spend metrics that they're looking for, as well as offline sales. And they want to do, it could be a national brand, but for them, local activation is extremely important. We see companies that focus on local, we see companies that focus on performance, but JamLoop is really in a unique position to combine these 2 elements of a national brand with a local presence, with an online presence as well. and give them really a more holistic view of how to execute a local campaign with a national footprint. And that's kind of where we're going next.
No, that's exciting. And I think with the platform you have, I mean, it seems like there's many, many applications, I think, beyond where you are now. And I'm excited to see where that goes. I'm excited to keep watching what happens in the CTV space. And then maybe someday we will get together and we do like a 2-guitar cover, like Hotel California or something, or Blue
Sure.
Sky by the Allman Brothers, or you can be Bob Weir, I'll be Jerry. We'll figure out some kind of 2-guitar
Would love to do it.
situation.
Yes.
We'll figure that out. Listen, thank you for coming on the podcast,
Mhm.
Leif, and we really appreciate it.
Scott, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. It's a lot of fun. Take care.